In the beginning, there was a sea, and then there came peoples. Different peoples who saw the sea as their resource, and then there came their interactions, their conflicts and friendships, their competitions and alliances, and then came their institutions and organizations. And then again, there are the people and there are individuals. There are those who remember and those who look into the future. There are those who reflect upon the divisions and those who search for unity. There are people who look for a common identity in the Baltic Sea area, and there are those who construct it in their everyday practices. There are those who speak of the region, and there are those who talk it into being. There are many of us, so different and yet so united in our pursuit to find out how, when, and why the Baltic Sea and the Baltic Sea area have become gateways for our narratives of Balticness. My name is Kazimierz Musiał, and on an everyday basis I work with Scandinavian Northern Europe. I have started the Young People Network for Balticness project to be able to debate and to learn about the Baltic Sea regionalism. Together with my partners from around the Baltic Sea, from different disciplines, we have invited students to come to the CBSS Summer University in Gdansk. We invited them to be critical about issues and friendly towards others who they did not initially know or understand. We invited them to talk about myths and history, to rationalize their beliefs and convictions, to constitute friendly narratives in a world that is shattered by conflicts and enmity. We have been curious to find out if the Baltic Sea region exists because of the institutions that have shaped it, or to what extent we as scholars doing the Baltic Sea region studies are able to shape and contribute to building up a new identity for the region. The city of Gdansk has not been selected by chance, as the city and its environs offer almost everything that one can associate with identity struggle in a nutshell. We sent students to get hands-on experience of the city.
We discussed what actually is the cultural memory of Gdansk. So we had a closer look on architecture, on the urbanistic structure of the town, to get an impression what shifted, in which way, the understanding and the meaning of cultural heritage. So we discussed the question if the cultural heritage of Gdansk has to be perceived as Polish, German, Gdansk. A lot of different groups contributed to the cultural heritage of the town, so that we can say that the cultural heritage of Gdansk is a transnational one, and in a certain way also transcultural.
Gdańsk is a very peculiar place that developed its very own specific identity. We spent some time in the old town of Gdańsk. It was a chance for us to learn the history. We started at the old town city hall. We could learn something more about Gdańsk, its complicated history throughout ages, from the Middle Ages through the modern era until now.
As city dwellers and travelers, we shape the modern perception of the city and space in which we live. We can choose our identification, reject what we do not like, and bring back what was forgotten. There was a synagogue from the 19th century that was torn down by the Nazis. But now, on the same site, we have a Shakespeare theatre building which reminds us about the theatre that stood here in the 17th century before the synagogue. we have an option of an elective affinity with the building blocks and narratives that construct our identity.
My mum's family came from Lithuania, from Kaunas, and that sort of issue of cultural memory, because there's no Jews now basically in the Baltic Sea region. I mean, there's a very few, a small number. But I was interested in how that cultural memory is preserved and cultural memory more generally. But I was surprised as well when I came to Gdansk. I saw a Scottish bar. I realised there's areas in Gdansk named after Scotland, and my dad is from Scotland. And I was thinking, that's so weird that on both sides of my family, even though I'm from the UK, quite far removed from the Baltic, I can see the influence that people, that I feel like my ancestors have had, both coming from the Baltic region and coming to the Baltic region, and seeing it more as a transient place where many different cultures and peoples interact.
This was the story of Gdańsk. But when it comes to the narratives founding the Baltic Sea region today, we can ask historically grounded questions relating to Hansa, symbolizing trade and interaction, or the fight for hegemony, Dominium Maris Baltici between Sweden, Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Russian Empire. We can also ask about contemporary identification patterns when the social capital of the region is still highly dependent on its Nordic, German, Polish and other East European or post-Soviet legacy.
Well, the problem is that, as we have seen, different social groups are part of a certain kind of cultural or collective memory, and certain groups are not. And that is something on one level, if you are not part of a certain kind of collective memory and not remembering, for instance, the common Soviet memory, then this is already something that separates certain kind of groups within the region, and that makes it difficult actually to come to a conclusion of an entire region or entire identity in the region.
So we talked about social capital of the Baltic Sea region. Basically, there's two separate parts of the Baltic Sea region. One is more Scandinavian model type. It's really popular and it kind of takes strength because of that culture, Scandinavian culture. And we talked about this more low-income, medium-income, post-communist part of Baltic Sea region, which is, I feel, still growing, still have a chance to build its own narrative, not necessarily looking up to the old ways of Scandinavian culture. Basically, we could build something based on our experiences, on our culture, and build something new.
First of all, I would say like this building, this European Solidarity Center is very modern, it's very amazing. And also about this exhibition, it helps me to learn lots of knowledge about the Polish history in the communist period and how Polish people struggled with this kind of shamanism from Soviet Union, and how Polish people to get this kind of solidarity or independence from this Soviet bloc.
I learned how important solidarity movement was in liberating from the socialist state, not only for Poland but for whole Europe, and how important power of the people can be and how effective it also can be.
Well, I would say that we have to remember that I always associate the Baltic region with Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia, and I'm very interested in their history, about the way how they achieve freedom, their fight for freedom during Soviet Union time.
Especially today, I got some inspiration from my colleagues, and they mentioned this Baltic chain, this event, and I really respect this kind of democracy and how people in Baltic Sea 3 countries to get their independence from the Soviet Union. And yeah, I'm so shocked, and I would like to analyze their mentality and which kind of motivation from them. I'm not from this region, especially I'm even not European. I'm from China. It's really far away from this continent. But my way to Balticness, I would say it's about democracy. And I would like to mention one of my experiences when I was traveling in Tallinn, and I went to the seaside. And I took lots of pictures. Even I saw that military ship in that seaport. And I was so amazing, since in China, especially in some like very strict countries, you cannot take picture with military basements, military ships, this kind of stuff. But like in Tallinn, I took picture and I was a little bit afraid maybe I would be caught by police. But after that, like I asked my friends there, and they said, okay, it's okay, it is allowed to take picture with them. In my presentation, my way to Balticness, I would just mention this democracy and their values.
There are so many different conceptions of the Baltic Sea region that I would always argue there are Baltic Sea regions, but not one Baltic Sea region.
We have to find the core. The core is the Baltic Sea. That's why environmental issues were the framework that kind of worked. We have explored a lot about the history. So it's like looking into the past, trying to find the root. But maybe if we try to be more like forward-looking, what we want to have it, what we want this region to become, not what it is, not what it was.
My attempt to tell the story of the Baltic Sea region through these constructs of different kind of networks and empires that dominate the Baltic Sea region, and actually bring that into existence with this particular perspective is also just one contribution to the existence of the Baltic Sea region. There are many more. For instance, you can have a perception of the Baltic Sea region through initiatives like the Council of the Baltic Sea States, but you can also have that through ideas of HELCOM, rather focusing on the sea as an environment that we all share.
We cannot, especially citizens that live around the Baltic Sea, we cannot separate ourselves from the Baltic Sea region, and especially the sea itself. So it's about working with the sea. That's kind of what my topic is about, and making sure we work with nature. We know the limits of our Baltic Sea area, and then make sure we don't overstep our boundaries, which is unfortunately what's been happening a lot. And now I think hopefully we're coming back, and things like this, these kind of discussions, are all about making sure that we come back and we understand where we live, because it's about knowing our sense of belonging, our heritage in this area, and how we can work with the environment and not work against it.
Environmental protection has been crucial for developing Baltic Sea identification and integration. Sustainable development has become almost synonymous with Baltic Sea regionalism. But is this narrative strong enough to furnish Balticness?
It was based on a very simple approach. I simply provided my students with an article on sustainability narratives so that they could become familiar with different concepts that are used and how we can approach sustainability narratives in a critical way. Another question was related to bottom-up approaches to governance participation. That we not only do we provide different concepts in a top-down manner, but we also focus on various public initiatives, or focus on engaging other stakeholders, Baltic Sea residents, in our discussions in different multi-stakeholder settings.
It's right that it turned out to be a quite recurring theme, not only about who controls narratives, but also what is politically doable and what is politically not doable. It also sometimes collided with political, or like with discussions about top-down approaches and bottom-up approaches. A good example would be, I don't know, narratives that are developed by institutions and then, I don't know, spread or disseminated from a top-down, like in a top-down way, and that do not quite reach the local population. We talk, for example, about the outreach of the Baltic Sea, of the youth platform of the Council of the Baltic Sea States that faces a similar problem that even though it wants to widen youth participation, the narratives that they develop only reach certain targeted audiences.
Maybe environmental issues as narratives are targeting only limited audiences. Are they strategic enough? Balticness is an option, a chance, a representation and an opportunity, even though it has to compete with other metaphors that contribute to the individual and collective identities.
My personal way to Balticness is just starting. I didn't feel connected to the Baltic Sea as part of my personal identity. I have family in Poland, I grew up in Germany, I have relatives in Finland, so I know that for a lot of people who are close to me, the Baltic Sea might be a part of their identity. Personally, I am approaching the Baltic Sea through my studies of Poland and getting to know the north of Poland more. My personal journey to the Baltic Sea, to Balticness, will continue. I don't know if I will ever adapt it as an identity for myself, as I grew up and live not close to the Baltic Sea, but I will definitely try to understand what it means for other people, what it means for the people I work with, what it means for politics in Europe.
You know, I was standing after the Emigration Museum the other day. I walked out along the pier. I saw a ship coming into Gdynia port. I don't know, I felt such a strong feeling. I felt really, I guess, sentimental for the Baltic Sea region, just standing there and feeling this feeling of the wind blowing, being in Gdynia port where so many people have left, such a meaningful place in history. You know, it's clear that there is some sort of Balticness that exists.